Okay, class. Well, we are going to start today with number 4. Week number 4 comprises of the closing of chapter number 3, which is about logic. And then, in the second half of the week, we are going to introduce the next module, which is module number 3 about personal finance, which is chapter number 8. Okay, as I mentioned before, we are closing chapter number 3, and in the closing of chapter number 3, we are going to review a concept that is very important, which is arguments. Okay, actually, the most important subject about this chapter is section 3.7. But for understanding properly section 3.7, which is about arguments, you need to have all the bases that were supposed to be covered between sections 3.1 all the way down to 3.6. Okay, we review different type of statements, single statements, compound statements. We establish connections that allows the creation of that allows the creation of compositive statements like conditionals, biconditionals, disjunctions, and conjunctions. We also establish the negation of those statements. We prove when two statements are equivalent by using the truth table. That means that we also review how to build the truth table for different type of statements. Now we are in the position of make judgments about arguments. And why the arguments are very important? Because those are the ones that we normally use in our daily life. Okay, so you're gonna see that our communication in our society always is gonna be addressed by arguments. So we argue based on premises that are the statements, and then from that we draw conclusions. That's what is an argument. So an argument might be valid or might be no valid argument. That's what you guys are going to review in your textbook. This is the first part of section 3.7, in which from the very beginning they introduce the concept of an argument, when an argument is valid. And what they is going to tell you is that the argument is valid whenever the conclusion follows from the given premise. Okay, now during the course of this section, during this week, we need to understand what the difference is between validity and trueness. So validity is not equal to trueness. It might be the case that you show that an argument is valid from the logical point of view, but it might be the case that one or two or some of the premises are false. Then, as a consequence, the conclusion really is not true. But from the logical point of view, your argument is valid. I mean, the conclusion follows from the premise. Now, when you have an argument that is valid and at the same time the premises that are given in that arguments are true, then as a consequence from the concept of argument, the valid argument, then as a consequence the conclusion is true as well. This is what is called a sound argument. Okay, so in here, let me just put this one that is in 194. No, I'm sorry, A9. Okay, then they introduce a concept that is sound argument. Sound argument is a valid argument in which, in addition, the premises are true. So you can say with 100% of validity, you can say that the conclusion also is true. Okay, not only follows from the premise, but also is true. That is a sound argument. So the sound argument is introduced in this section just to establish a difference between validity and trueness. And actually, in this section, they discuss two very nice examples about the smartphones. So they create two arguments about the smartphones that at the end drives you to conclusions that are different, but both arguments are valid. So this is what is reinforced the concept that in a valid argument, the trueness of the conclusion is relative to the trueness of the premises. So trueness is not equal to validity. The other thing that we are going to introduce in this section is something that is very important. Well, what happens when an argument is not valid? When an argument is not valid, we say that that argument is a fallacy. Okay? So our communication on daily life are plenty of fallacies. And this is the most important consequence from this chapter number 3. And that's what I want you guys to keep with you from this course. Okay? That you may find in your daily life arguments coming from third parties that are not valid. Those ones are fallacies. So you need to be aware of those ones because those arguments are very persuasive. They are very convincing. But in reality, there are no valid. From the logical point of view, there are no arguments. Those arguments are not valid, are fallacy. That is very common in the commercials, advertisement that we see in the media. That is very common in the interviews. Okay, that is very, very common in the debates between politicians and also political rallies. Those are very common. So you can see personalities that they try to sell fallacies instead of valid argument. And we need to be aware of those ones. We need to train our brain little by little. Okay? I'm not going to say that now you're going to be an expert, but at least you have the basis and the fundamental that allows you in the future to train your brain and be aware of those arguments that are not valid, that are fallacies, because those ones are the ones that you need to reject. You cannot accept those ones. Okay? Well, this is what I want to comment and for this update of September 16, and that's what we're going to do during this week. Okay? So, and also I didn't mention too much about what is coming next, no? So this is about chapter number 3, the closing of chapter number 3, and then we are going to start with chapter number 8, which is about personal finance. I'm going to introduce in chapter number 8 the concept of percent, because percent is the basis, the fundamental concept to understand all what have to do with personal finance. And we are going to introduce that with sections 8.1 and 8.3 during this week. Okay, well, thank you.